I was scrolling through my feed late last night when I came across this creator, let's call her Maya. She had these striking, soulful eyes and a faint scar running down her cheek that she claimed came from a childhood accident. She was talking about radical self-love and the pain of being different, and the comment section was a beautiful, raw outpouring of human emotion. People were sharing their own traumas, crying in their profile pictures, and thanking her for her bravery. Her engagement was through the roof, a perfect picture of a community built on shared vulnerability. Then Maya reached up to brush a stray hair out of her face, and for a fraction of a second, her fingers blurred. It was a tiny glitch, a pixelated stutter in the rendering. I slowed the video down and realized the truth. Maya wasn't a person. She didn't have a childhood or a scar or a soul. She was a highly optimized digital costume designed by a marketing agency specifically to farm empathy and redirect it toward a $60 a month workout subscription. Seeing thousands of people pour their most intimate secrets into a void managed by a spreadsheet honestly left me kind of stunned. It wasn't just the lie, it was the chilling efficiency of it. That instantaneous shift from feeling a deep human connection to realizing I was looking at a high-performing empathy loop made me realize the internet has entered a new, weirder era. We aren't just fighting for attention anymore. We were in a full-scale trust crisis where realness is becoming the most expensive luxury on Earth. This is the new reality of the platform wars, a world where AI-made people, algorithmic memory, and automated scams are turning the web into a giant costume shop, and we're all paying rent just to figure out who's actually behind the mask.
That is such a powerful story because it really captures the shift.
It felt like a gut punch.
Right. It's a move from, an economy of attention, just getting your eyeballs, to an economy of trust, or maybe an economy of verification.
Proving that what you're seeing is even real in the first place.
Exactly. And that little glitch you saw, that blur, it's not just a technical error. It's like seeing a crack in the wall of this entire digital world we've built.
And that's really where we need to start this deep dive, because I feel like when we talk about this trust crisis, we get stuck. We talk about deepfakes, misinformation, how to spot a bot. We talk about it like it's a content problem.
Like it's a software problem that can be fixed with a better algorithm.
Yes. But what your story about Maya shows is that she's just the front end. She's the smiling face on this huge industrial scale machine.
Absolutely. And if we only look at the software, at the avatars, we miss the real conflict. There's this silent, massive war being fought underneath all of this.
A war over what?
Over the hardware of trust. I'm talking about the actual physical stuff.
Yeah.
The energy grids, the fiber optic cables, the economic bubbles that are funding it all, and the identity systems states are building to try and manage the chaos.
The hardware of trust. Not the code, but the concrete. Not the pixels, but the power plants.
The plumbing of this new reality.
Exactly. And to really get the scale of this, we have to look away from our screens. We have to look at the power grid. There's this story about a systems engineer, a guy named Chen, that completely changed how I think about all this.
Yes, this case is fascinating because it strips away all the marketing nonsense about AI and just shows you the raw physics of it.
Right. So you have to picture this guy, Chen. He's a veteran engineer. He's not in a trendy startup office. He's in a massive state-run control room, and he's looking out over this huge industrial corridor.
So we're talking smokestacks, power lines, heavy industry.
The real engine room of an economy. And while, the West is debating whether a cute cat video is AI generated, Chen is dealing with a very, very real crisis, a physical one.
He's watching the grid frequency, right?
Yeah.
He's watching the literal heartbeat of the region.
Exactly. And his monitors are screaming at him. There's this localized, incredibly aggressive surge in power demand. It's not a heat wave. It's not everyone turning on their air conditioners.
It's the data centers.
It's a brand new cluster of hyperscale data centers that just came online, and they are just sucking down megawatts to pump out what the platforms love to call infinite content.
They're rendering the Mayas of the world.
Yeah.
Text cards.
They are creating the noise. And here's the conflict. To the platform that owns that data center, that power surge is a huge success. It's growth, it's engagement metrics going through the roof.
But to Chen, at his console, that surge is a threat. It's a dangerous instability that could trip breakers and plunge the whole region into a blackout.
And this is the moment that just crystallizes the whole thing for me. Chen doesn't have time to think about the ethics of AI avatars. He doesn't care if Maya is soulful.
He just sees a structural problem.
A physics problem. He sees that the grid cannot support both this infinite content farm and, right next door, a massive semiconductor plant, a factory making the actual physical chips that the entire economy runs on. He has to choose one.
And that choice is the perfect example of what we're talking about. Institutional efficacy.
He executes a load balancing protocol. He basically throttles the data center. He makes a call.
And a call is.
He prioritizes the electricity for the semiconductor plant, the tangible, strategic, physical industry. And he cuts back the power going to the content farm's cooling systems.
Yeah.
And he just watches the needles on his console stabilize. The grid is safe. The factory keeps churning out chips. And the digital world, well, maybe Maya's fingers blurred a bit more that day. Maybe a chatbot's response was a little slower. But what Chen proved is that in the real hierarchy of things, physics always wins.
In the West, we tend to think of these platforms as, I don't know, untouchable, like they exist in this magical cloud.
Right.
But Chen's action shows that the state, the entity that controls the electrons, the physical grid, holds the ultimate kill switch. And this is the core of what some are calling AI infrastructure sovereignty.
And sovereignty is a word we hear a lot, but usually it means like borders and laws.
It used to, but now it also means volts and amps and water rights. AI infrastructure sovereignty is basically the ability of a state or a nation to run its AI capabilities within its own physical and environmental limits.
So it's a recognition that AI isn't really a software thing anymore.
It's not. That's the paradigm shift. It is now an infrastructure-driven system. If you can't control the physics of it, the power, the cooling, the fiber, you do not control the intelligence. Simple.
And the physics are, well, they're pretty brutal. You've mentioned before that there's a big difference in how AI hits the grid. There's training and then there's inference.
Totally different beasts, especially to a grid operator like Chen. Training is the phase where you're building the model. You're throwing just petabytes of data at it, teaching it to see patterns.
So that's the heavy lifting.
It's incredibly heavy. The power demand is bursty. It's like turning on a gigantic industrial furnace. You get these massive sudden spikes in energy use that can last for weeks, even months. That's what threatens the immediate stability of the grid.
And inference is what happens after.
Inference is the day-to-day operation. It's the AI in the wild. It's you asking a question or Maya's face being rendered for 1 million viewers. The power draw for each individual action is smaller, but the key is that the volume is essentially infinite. It never stops.
So it creates a new permanent load on the grid.
A huge continuous base load that's global and runs 24/7. The research shows that these large-scale AI deployments are now operating on the same scale as major industrial facilities. We're talking tens, sometimes hundreds of megawatts per site.
A data center isn't just a big building with computers. From an energy perspective, it's an aluminum smelter or a steel mill.
And that reality is what drives this new definition of sovereignty. If a nation wants to actually be in control in this century, it has to co-design and control 3 distinct physical layers. If you fail on any one of these, you basically become a vassal state. You're dependent. The data centers themselves, and more specifically, their cooling systems. We are hitting a thermal wall, a physical limit. The newest generation of AI chips, the GPUs you need to render these hyper-realistic avatars, they run so incredibly hot.
Hotter than previous chips.
Orders of magnitude hotter. The power density is so extreme that air cooling, just blowing fans on them, is becoming obsolete. It doesn't work anymore. They would literally melt. Liquid cooling. We're now at a point where we have to plumb these massive computer racks like you'd plumb a nuclear reactor or a high-performance engine.
So it's not just about electricity, it's also about water.
It's very much about water. And it's about the manufacturing of those incredibly complex liquid cooling systems. If a state can't build them, or if it doesn't have the water resources to manage that heat, it can't host the intelligence. It doesn't matter if you have the best coders in the world. If you can't cool the chips, you can't run the model.
That is a very hard physical boundary. Okay, so cooling is layer 1. What's layer 2?
The optical networks. The actual backbone of the internet. We talk about the cloud like it's ethereal, but it's not. It's data traveling at the speed of light through glass fibers, most of which are running along the ocean floor.
The submarine cables.
The submarine cables. If you don't control that fiber, the physical lines, the landing stations where they come ashore, the ships that repair them when they break, then you don't have sovereignty. If your nation's AI relies on a cable owned by a foreign power or a corporation, you can't regulate.
They can just throttle you or cut you off entirely.
You can. It's the difference between owning your own car and owning the road it drives on. Chen could turn down the power because the state owned the grid. If the data center's internet connection was owned by someone else, his control would be incomplete.
Right, so you need the cooling, you need the networks. What's the third layer?
The energy system itself, the simple, raw availability of clean, reliable power, is now what we call a hard deployment boundary.
Meaning you can't just build one of these things anywhere you want.
Not anymore. You can't just drop a gigawatt data center in the middle of the desert and hope for the best. You need the generation capacity to be there first. And this is why Chen's story is so important. It's a blueprint for the future.
Because he wasn't just a passive observer. He was an active manager of the system.
He was exercising what you could call operational sovereignty. He had real-time visibility telemetry into every part of the grid. He could see the factory's demand and the data center's demand, and he had the authority and the tools to make a choice, to prioritize.
So the very AI that's causing the problem could also be the solution.
That's the irony, isn't it? We will almost certainly need agentic AI smart systems to manage the power grids, to balance the insane load created by other AI agents in the data centers. It's a snake eating its own tail. But the core lesson is clear. You cannot have a sovereign AI if your power grid collapses or you run out of water to cool your servers. The real world, Chen's world of switches and grids, sets the boundaries for the virtual world.
That active prioritization, choosing industry over content, stability over engagement, it really feels like a specific philosophy. It's a worldview that treats the internet not as some kind of digital public square or entertainment venue, but as a utility that must serve the core national interests.
And if it threatens that interest,
It cut the wire. It's a return to a kind of industrial realism.
it's a brutal reminder that a country's power isn't measured in clicks, but in gigawatts.
Which is the perfect bridge to the economic side of this whole mess. Because if the physics of AI is shaking the power grid, the economics of it is shaking the entire global financial system. And just like Chen saw the difference between a real factory and a content farm, the market is starting to grapple with the difference between real value and, well, fake value.
The massive divergence between tangible utility and what some are calling illusory valuation.
Yeah, and to understand that, I want to talk about this guy, Gia. His story really brings the bubble to life. For 3 years, Gia's job title was digital strategist. What he really did was manage the careers of high-earning AI avatars. He was the man behind the curtain for entities just like Maya.
I mean, that's a job that would have sounded like pure science fiction just a few years ago.
Completely. And he describes living in this world of illusory valuation. He'd be in these board meetings where a virtual influencer who literally did not exist, had no body, no rights, no heartbeat, was securing million-dollar brand deals. He watched his company's stock price soar based on these completely intangible assets.
He said it felt weightless.
Exactly. Weightless, like playing with casino chips. You know they have value inside the casino, but you also know deep down they're just plastic discs.
So what was his breaking point? What made him leave?
It was a train ride. He was on a high-speed train going home, and it passed through this massive industrial zone right by the coast. He's just looking out the window.
And what does he see?
He sees reality. He sees giant automated ports with robotic cranes moving thousands of shipping containers. He sees forests of wind turbines spinning. He sees miles of freight trains carrying raw materials. He sees the actual physical throughput of a real economy.
World of atoms, not bit.
And he has this sudden, crushing epiphany. He thinks to himself, if my company's servers, all our AI avatars, if they all just vanish tomorrow, if there was a power cut or a solar flare, what would actually be lost?
Some pixels?
Some pixels?
Yeah.
People would be bored, maybe annoyed, the Mayas would disappear, but the world would fundamentally keep turning.
But if that port stops...
If that port stops, the supply chain bleeds out. Everything grinds to a halt. Factories shut down. Store shelves go empty. Medicine doesn't get delivered. The consequences are immediate, physical, and catastrophic. So Gia realized that this digital trust crisis we're talking about, it's not just about fake videos, it's a symptom that the entire virtual economy might be a bubble. So he quit.
And what's he doing now?
He works in logistics. He tracks cold, hard tonnage moving through that same port. He went from the economy of likes to the economy of atoms.
Gia's story is a perfect microcosm of a huge macroeconomic fear that's building right now. We're looking at a market that is so dangerously concentrated around this idea of illusory valuation.
Everyone talks about the Magnificent Seven tech stocks, but the numbers, when you really look at them, are just They're wild.
Those few companies, Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA, the big players, they now account for something like 35% of the entire S&P 500.
35% from just a handful of companies.
The level of concentration is on par with or even exceeds the peak of the dot-com bubble in 2000. The entire financial system, in a way, has become this giant leveraged bet on the future of AI. It is a naked bet. And the analysis on this is terrifying. One report I saw warned that if the AI market collapses, it could wipe out roughly $30 trillion in value.
30 trillion. It's a number so big, it's meaningless.
It's more than the annual GDP of the entire United States. It is a world-altering amount of money. And the real danger here, and this is why Gia's story is so important, is that we're not just talking about stock prices falling. The risk is a debt-fueled collapse.
Meaning this whole build-out, it's not being done with cash on hand.
Not even close. These companies are borrowing. They're borrowing trillions of dollars. The capital expenditure needed to build all this AI infrastructure we talked about with Chen, the data centers, the chips, the power plants, is estimated to be around $6 trillion by 2030.
$6 trillion.
That money is coming from private credit markets, from massive bond issuances. They are leveraging themselves to the absolute hilt to build the casino.
And they're building it all on the assumption that the avatars, the Mayas, are going to generate enough real money to pay the rent.
That is the bet, that the Maya economy will create enough tangible revenue to pay back the debt on all this physical infrastructure. And get this, there was a statistic from the first half of 2025.
Okay.
It said that AI-driven infrastructure investment accounted for 92% of all U.S. GDP growth.
Wait, 92%. Well, that sounds like the economy is just paying itself.
Recursive growth. It's the snake eating its own tail. We are booking the cost of building the casino as economic success before we even know if anyone will show up to gamble or if the house will even win.
So if the Mayas turn out to be worthless, if the trust crisis makes people tune out, or if advertisers realize bots don't buy pickup trucks, then all that infrastructure just becomes bad debt.
It becomes the world's most expensive ghost town. Silicon and copper and fiber optic cables leading to nowhere.
So why are they making this bet? What is the mechanism they think is going to guarantee a payout?
This is where we get into the concept of cognitive effects. In the old internet, say Web 2.0, the big lock-in mechanism was network effects.
Right. You stayed on Facebook because all your friends were on Facebook.
Exactly. It was a social mode. The new model, the AI-driven model, is different. It's about building a cognitive moat. The goal is for the AI to know you better than you know yourself. It's designed to analyze everything, your micro-behaviors, how long you pause on a video, maybe even your pupil dilation. It uses that to build a behavioral context of you that is so accurate it can predict what you want before you consciously realize you want it. The platform tries to own your entire decision-making process.
Which brings us back to the costume shop. You pay rent in data or money because the platform provides the context for your life. It knows you.
But Gia's epiphany on that train just cuts right through all of that. He realized that this owned context is fragile. It's soft power. If the economic bubble bursts, that context just evaporates.
But a shipping container full of grain.
A shipping container full of grain is still a shipping container full of grain. Tangible output. That is value that survives a market crash. And in a total crisis of trust, physical utility becomes the only safe harbor. That is the doctrine of real power.
When everything else is a simulation, you bet on the things you can touch. But there's a third piece to this puzzle. We've hit the physics of the grid, the fragility of the money, but what about the people? How do we even verify that a person is a person anymore?
The identity crisis.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really personal really fast.
I read about this situation in, of all places, a retirement community. And it wasn't a future scenario. This was happening to them right now. The community was being absolutely bombarded with AI voice cloning scams.
This is the dark side of the Maya technology.
Yeah.
It's being weaponized.
And aimed directly at the most vulnerable. The scams were just chillingly perfect. An elderly woman gets a phone call. And on the other end is her grandson's voice. Not a clumsy imitation. His actual voice. The cadence, the way he says certain words, the panic.
The background noise is probably simulated too. Car horns, sirens.
He's screaming that he's been in an accident or he's in jail and he needs her to wire money immediately. And because the sensory input, the sound of his voice, is a perfect match to her memory.
Her brain's critical thinking, the is this real filter just gets completely bypassed.
Completely. And the result was a total collapse of the social fabric in that community, a total breakdown of trust. People stopped answering their phones. They stopped opening their doors to neighbors. If a real neighbor called asking for help, they'd hang up, assuming it was a bot.
The very concept of neighborliness just disintegrated.
Because the fundamental channel of trust, the human voice, had been poisoned.
This is what the researchers call the impersonation crisis. When you can no longer reliably distinguish human from machine, the only rational individual defense is total isolation.
And the state stepped in. And this is the part that I found so fascinating, especially given how much we claim to value privacy in the West. The government implemented a mandatory blockchain-backed digital identity verification system.
The green light system.
The green light. They pushed an update to the whole telecom infrastructure. Now, when a phone rings in that community, the handset checks for a state-linked biometric anchor. If the system verifies the caller is a real human with a biological signature on file with the government, a little green light literally glows on the phone.
And if it's a bot or an unverified number?
Red light. Or just silence. It doesn't even ring.
This is a textbook example of a proof of human system.
And what blew me away was the reaction from the residents. You'd think there would be outrage. The government is tracking my calls. This is a massive invasion of privacy. But that's not what happened at all.
They were relieved.
They were deeply relieved. They welcomed the intrusion because the alternative was living in this paranoid, isolated digital wasteland. They chose collective survival over the abstract ideal of individual anonymity.
And that choice is the absolute crux of the new social contract that's emerging. That story shows a pivot away from the ideal of individual control and toward collective reliance.
What do you mean by that?
In a world of infinite AI noise and perfect impersonation, the individual can no longer protect themselves. It's an unfair fight. You can't just educate your grandmother to spot a deepfake that is mathematically indistinguishable from reality. It's impossible.
So you need a shield, an institutional shield.
You need an institutional shield. This model prioritizes institutional efficacy. The state becomes the provider of truth simply because nobody else can do it at scale.
And this isn't just about protecting grandma from scams. It has huge implications for democracy itself.
There was a study where researchers sent 30,000 emails to legislators. Half were written by real, passionate students. The other half were generated by an AI.
And the politicians couldn't tell the difference.
Their staff. The professional aides, whose entire job is to read constituent mail and gauge public opinion. They couldn't distinguish the real people from the bots.
So the entire feedback loop of a representative democracy is just broken. If a politician gets 1 million angry emails about a policy, they have no way of knowing if it's 1 million voters or one person with a server farm.
Exactly. Welcome to the costume shop.
Yeah.
Everyone is now a verification problem, and this is what's forcing the creation of these identity systems. But the way they're being built is splitting the world into very different geopolitical camps.
The green light system represents approach, the centralized, state-backed model.
Correct. It's the model you see emerging in places like Estonia, or with India's Aadhaar system or China's social credit system. The state is the single source of truth. It's efficient, it restores order very quickly, like it did for those retirees.
But it creates a single point of failure.
A huge one. If the state's database gets hacked, it's a catastrophe. And more chillingly, if the state decides you're an enemy, it can effectively delete you from society.
The research brought up the example of the Taliban seizing the biometric databases the U.S. left behind in Afghanistan. That data was built to help people, but when the regime changed, it became a hit list.
That is the ultimate nightmare scenario of centralized efficacy, which is why there's a competing model. The decentralized or web of trust approach.
This is what the crypto and privacy advocates are pushing for.
Yes. Projects like WorldCoin, which scans your iris but tries to encrypt the data so no single entity owns your identity. Or things like Gitcoin Passport, which builds your identity score from lots of different attestations.
Attestations. So, like digital vouchers.
Instead of the government saying, yes, he's real, the network says, well, 10 other verified people vouch for him, his bank account is 10 years old, his social media is active. It's a reputation score built from many sources.
The advantage being there's no central kill switch.
Exactly. It preserves privacy and avoids the Taliban scenario. But the big problem is friction.
It's hard to use. My grandmother is not going to manage a private key.
She is not. She just wants the green light on her phone to turn on. This tension between the simple efficiency of state control and the complex privacy of a decentralized web is what's shaping the geopolitical landscape of sovereign AI.
And the research breaks that new map of the world down into 4 distinct models, which really feels like a preview of the next century.
It's the new world order, in a way. First, you have the AI technostates.
US and China.
The US and China. Nations with high state capacity, massive resources, and heavy state investment or regulation. The state wants to own the entire stack, the chips, the power, the models, and the identity system. They aim to be the ultimate arbiters of truth for their populations. The neo-feudal systems. This is the dystopian path. This is what happens when you have a weak, ineffective government, but very powerful corporations.
So the company-town model on a national scale.
A giant tech corporation becomes the de facto sovereign. They issue your digital ID. They control the digital currency. You live entirely within their ecosystem because the state has failed to provide a viable alternative.
Which goes right back to the idea of cognitive effects. The corporation owns your identity and your behavioral context. You're not a citizen, you're a serf in their digital kingdom.
Then you have the third model, systems. This is what places like the EU, India, or Singapore are trying to build.
Trying to find a middle path.
They're trying to thread the needle. They want to create digital public infrastructure, open standards and protocols that the state regulates, but that private companies can build on top of. They want the security of the green light without the total surveillance of the technostate or the corporate capture of neo-feudalism.
And the fourth category on this map is the losers.
Yes, the neo-colonies. These are nations with low state capacity. They don't have the capital to build the data centers. They don't manufacture the chips. They don't have the talent to build the models. They simply consume the AI services offered by the technostates and the corporations.
So they become data farms.
They become data farms. Their citizens' data is mined. Their labor is used to label data sets, but they have no control, no ownership, no voice. They have zero sovereignty in this new world.
It's a brutal new hierarchy. You're either a landlord, a tenant, or you are the land itself, being mined for resources.
And that's why the story of that retirement community is so profound. They were faced with a choice. They saw the chaos of the ungoverned neo-feudal internet with its scams and its poison, and they chose the technostate solution. They traded a piece of their privacy for the sanity of knowing who was on the other end of the line.
It really does connect every single thread we've been pulling on today. We started with the single fake influencer, Maya, and how she was eroding emotional trust. It seemed like a small surface-level problem.
Right, a content problem.
But when we pulled on that thread, the entire global system started to unravel. We saw the physical consequences in Shen's control room. He had to make a choice. Support a world of Mayas or support a world of physical industry. He chose industry because he understood that real sovereignty is based on physics, not on viral content.
Then we saw Gia on the train. He looked at the money behind Maya. He saw the $30 trillion bubble, the casino built on debt, and he fled to the port, to the world of tangible output, because he knew that in a crisis, real power is moving atoms, not bits.
And finally, we saw those residents facing an army of fake grandsons. They realized the costume shop had become too dangerous to navigate on your own, so they accepted the green light. They accepted state-backed proof of human because their collective survival depended on it. You know, the internet used to be sold to us as a place to escape reality. You could be anyone you wanted. Anonymity was a feature. It was a form of freedom.
And now that entire polarity has flipped. The digital world is the place of constant, pervasive deception.
So realness itself becomes the ultimate luxury asset, the ability to prove you are you, the ability to verify a human voice, the ability to know the thing you're buying actually exists. We are well and truly in the costume shop era now. But we're not just browsing anymore.
No, we're paying rent.
We are paying rent. We pay in energy from our grids, we pay in the stability of our financial markets, and we pay with our privacy. All just to keep the lights on and get a glimpse of who's actually behind the mask.
The rent is due, and the landlord is an algorithm that demands total verification.
That's the hardware of the trust crisis. It's not about the software anymore. It's about the machine that runs it all.